Hey YouTube, how's it going? Just quick one with this video, you'll see in the title. I just want a quick one. I want to talk to you about GPUs, the sort of current climate, and why I genuinely do think people should be buying more AMD GPUs. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to add, firstly, I've got barely any subscribers, so this is definitely not sponsored. So you can tell that it's impartial in that point, and I am definitely not a AMD fanboy. I mean, I can't even really comment too high on the actual using an AMD GPU, because I mean, for the last 8 years I've had Nvidia. Now, I don't need to tell you how AM5 is doing tremendously in the CPU socket at the moment. I have an Intel CPU, but I have it because I got it as a bargain. I've got a 12900KS that I paid £200 for. So that's why I have it. Otherwise, I might have considered an X3D chip from AMD. That being said, we're here to talk about GPUs. Now, I'm not here to tell you whether you should prefer AMD or you should prefer Nvidia, and I'm not here to try and talk negatively about Nvidia just so that you potentially buy an AMD product. I'm literally just going to throw out how I see the market, what I see, and why I think that AMD at present, at least for the next year or so, is a kind of a really good choice for a GPU right now. I'm actually considering AMD for my GPU upgrade. I'm literally stuck between an Nvidia model and an AMD model. But the thing is, yeah, you can buy cards at the minute in AMD because they're not selling. They now have their budget king status. You can come at me and tell me that the AMD are a better value, but you need to understand that AMD and Nvidia are basically the same. They're just a huge corporation. The only thing that they're interested in is making money. And I can tell you now for a fact that if AMD were in Nvidia's position, you would all hate AMD because they would be doing exactly the same as Nvidia. It's a big corporation that is just there to make money. That being said, fortunately, over the last couple of generations of GPU, AMD has really made headroom on catching up with a lot of things and features and stuff. Those of you that turn around and they're like, "Oh, ray tracing is not important," I say, yes, ray tracing. The crutch. People say that ray tracing doesn't matter. Ray tracing is becoming more and more prevalent. The way you can tell that is that AMD cards have got RT cores on them now as well. So even AMD are taking RT seriously. And anyone that turns around and says that you need a 4080 Super or a 4090 for you to be able to enjoy ray tracing properly, you're chatting. Like, ray tracing is actually an option that is keeping me thinking about the 4070 Ti Super over the RX 7900 XT. It is RT, because you can tell me that ray tracing, you need some big fancy card to enjoy it. Well, no, you don't, because I've got a 3060 in here, and this is Doom Eternal being ray traced, and we're pushing 200 FPS, and this is what, yes, I'm using DLSS quality at 1080p, but if I wasn't, I would lose 30, maybe 40 FPS. I'd still be pushing 200 FPS whilst ray tracing at 1080p. Yes, I'm at 1080p, but I'm using a 3060. I genuinely believe that if I had a 3070 or a 3080 10 gig, then I'd be able to do this at 1440p. So, and anyone that comes at me about 4K, look, a 4070 Super shouldn't be able to fucking ray trace the crap out of 4K, because if it could, why would anyone buy a 4080 Super? Like, and people don't seem to understand. They see consoles running 4K. Consoles run 1080p and then upscale it to 4K. At best, you're running 1440p and upscaling to 4K. None of them run native 4K. It's not native 4K. On a PC, you need to spend over £1,000 for native 4K, 60 plus FPS. You do. From either side of the freaking equation. So, look, ray tracing is one of those things. Like I said, this is Doom Eternal. There's obviously a recording that I've used. You could this video is actually on YouTube. I have this footage up, so you can go view it if you want. But again, Doom Eternal, fully ray traced. And I mean, the ray tracing is definitely on. It is definitely working. It absolutely looks freaking amazing. And look how stable that frame time is, and look at those frame rates. It's just, I mean, what more do you want from a game? So anyone that turns around and says that ray tracing needs to be on some big, huge card or whatever, no, it doesn't. This is literally ray traced 1080p on a 3060, and it's recorded in AV1, encoding on an A380. That's all that's happening right here. So yeah, you don't need to have some big fancy card to ray trace. If it's got ray tracing cores, it's going to be able to do it to a level. It's all down to what you prefer. So for me, yes, RT is part of my decision making. It is, because I use it. But you don't have to use it. Raster's pretty good. We'll have a video coming up on how to ray trace properly using your settings and stuff, so that you get results like this rather than what you see on YouTube usually when people are just completely maxing everything out thinking that's the way to ray trace. It's not. Anyways, that being said, this is just proof that you don't need a big fancy card to do these difficult GPU things. This 3060 runs ray traced games at 1080p at high refresh rate. So like, I don't see the argument. I don't see the problem. I'm not saying that you can't roster a game and have a great time. Like, look, to me, I love good graphics on a game, but it's not the most important thing on the planet. Gameplay is way more important. Like, a good looking game is more of a nice to have than a must have, whereas a good playing game is a must have. That being said, getting back onto the GPUs, like I said, I've used NVIDIA for the last couple of upgrades. 1080. What would I have got instead? In 2017? What else would I have got other than 1080 at the price I was paying for that? And then obviously during the Scalpocalypse, I upgraded to a 3060, and yes, it was an upgrade. I might have only got like 5-10% more performance, but I also got a chunk more VRAM, and I've been really happy with this 3060. I have it extremely overclocked and stuff in it. She plays well. I modded the crap out of it, but I digress. So yes, I'm no AMD fanboy. I've not used AMD GPUs really. In other people's builds and stuff, they seem to play quite well. I know that AMD fanboys and stuff really chirp on about the software and stuff that seems to be intertwined with AMD. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to use any baked in software. Like, I don't use it with NVIDIA, so I'm not going to use it with AMD. All I need a card to do is just take drivers and play a game. I don't want it to have some software in the background utilizing system when it doesn't need to. It's not like I don't have plenty of system to go around. That's not the point. The point is I just don't use that stuff. If I'm overclocking my GPU, I use MSI Afterburner. I like the program, I like the software. Even with other software available, I will probably still use that software because I'm used to it. But that's just me. Like, I mean, you might take an AMD card, use the Adrenaline software and just think it's the best thing since sliced bread and be absolutely amazed by it. You go ahead, that's fine, right? And I'm certain that's just not me. So the thought of having the way AMD people seem to go on about the Adrenaline software is like it's a necessity for the GPU to run, and I don't want that. Like, so that's one of the caveats that is literally stopping me taking the plunge with 7900 XT. That's one thing that does bother me a little bit, because like I said, with NVIDIA, I just go onto the internet, I go grab a driver and I update the driver. I give it a clean install, that's it. Wash my hands of everything else. I have NVIDIA's app on my PC, but I've nuked it down to the point where if I don't have it turned on, it doesn't even operate. Like, I don't use any of the recording software like Shadow Play and stuff, because I literally use a direct feed from my GPU, goes through a pass through on the motherboard and then straight out to my capture card, which then comes back into my system and gets processed on my RK380. So for me, none of the sort of like Shadow Play or any of that recording stuff or anything of that crap that is baked into these cards, I don't need it. I don't use it. All I use a GPU for is gaming, and then, like, you know, raw horsepower whilst I'm editing or anything like that. I kind of like playing around with rendering and stuff, like, so the 3060 is good for that. I can't knock it, and so's the A380. Like, so I don't need a card for that, so I don't need the Adrenaline software on an AMD card. Now, I know the title said everyone should be buying AMD cards. I'm getting to it. I'm not hating on AMD. I'm just trying to put across to you that if anyone tries coming at me with an angle of, yeah, but AMD's got all this software and stuff, I don't care. Like, I don't care. It's like literally the worst thing to promote to me. I actually like, you come at me as much as you want, yeah. I like NVIDIA's control panel. Like, I like how simple and straight up and basic it is. I like that it hasn't wrapped itself with a load of waffle to make it look pretty. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, it does everything that I need it to. I'm trying to think, is there anything that I need to go anywhere other than control panel for? Because I just go in there, you set up your resolution, you set up your refresh rate, you set up whether you can have G-Sync set up or not, or FreeSync on AMD side, is it? So you just go in, you set all that up, you set your colours up, and done. So I don't need any software past anything as basic and simple as NVIDIA's control panel. I know a lot of you would be like, oh, whatever, but honestly, I don't use anything past that. What I use is I use MSI Afterburner because I like the software when it comes to overclocking. I create my own curve when it comes to my GPU. So I will sit there and I will move every single freaking dot on that curve until I'm happy with where it's at. That's how I like to overclock. I like the software. I'm not going to use anything else. It's what I've used for years. I'm used to it. So yeah, so I'm not going to harp on about AMD's software being why you should buy a GPU. That being said, I am now going to get to the point of why I think that more of you should be buying AMD GPUs and why I'm still considering an AMD GPU for my upgrade. If you are the type of person who buys a GPU, you know, every couple of years or every year or so, and you just want something that's going to give you excellent gaming for the next year or so. Now, I genuinely believe that there's probably going to be some pretty big leaps and bounds in the GPU space, and things are going to get shook up in the GPU space in the next couple of years. But that being said, at the moment there are so many console to PC port games that are being released, that are going to be released over the next year or so, and whether Nvidia fanboys like it or not, consoles are based on AMD architecture. So when porting it to PC, AMD's already got a step up. That's why you tend to see either AMD cards keeping up with Nvidia cards that they necessarily shouldn't keep up with in the real world, if you get me, or exceeding cards that they probably shouldn't on a horsepower 1-to-1 sort of basis. Now, that's really good for anyone that's got an AMD card. So if you're buying a GPU to get you through the next year or so, to see what shows up in a couple of years from both parties, if you're literally looking to buy a GPU, AMD right now, because they're not selling, they now again have their Budget King title. Now you need to understand, obviously, AMD only charge what they have to. If they wanted to give you these cards at these ridiculously cheap prices for performance, they would have released them at these prices and not waited until no one bought them and then dropped the price down, and now they're the Budget King. That's my argument with anyone saying, oh, AMD, you act like AMD do everything for the gamer. They're doing it for the same reason as Nvidia. But that being said, we have a lot of console to PC ports coming through the system in the next year, within the next year or so. So, and because fundamentally consoles are AMD built, they are AMD architecture, the whole thing is AMD. When porting it to PC, getting it to work smoothly on AMD GPU architecture is not difficult because it's already on it. Like, all they're doing is just tarting it up, tweaking it up so that the GPUs can run it faster. That's it. Whereas when adding Nvidia to the table, they're adding the architecture. They then have to design the game to fit Nvidia's architecture. They work differently. They do the same thing, but they do it in a different way. AMD and Nvidia. So, and more often than not, by the time it comes to porting to PC, like, the game's been developed and stuff, and there's barely any time left or any money left in the pot for them to put real effort into porting over everything else that they need to get it to run properly. This is why quite regularly these days, games released and they just run like a bag of crap, because by the time it comes to getting them like running properly on all these different architectures, there's no time or money in the pot, because the corporate bastards are literally forcing these game companies to just ship the game out, whether it's ready or not. They don't care. So, that being said, for the next year or so, I personally would recommend an AMD GPU. I can't deny the fact that a lot of the games that you are probably going to want to play are going to be console to PC ports. And if they are console to PC ports, especially if they come from PlayStation side of things, I feel like when Xbox port a game, even though it might be based on a console, it tends to just work better with PC hardware. But that might just be purely because, it's Microsoft. But certainly PlayStation ported games are extremely AMD architectured. Is that a word? Is it? Well, anyways, look, the fact of the matter is, you should be buying an AMD GPU right now. I'm not going to tell you definitely should. You buy what you want to buy. It's your money. Right? If you want to fanboy over green, or you want to fanboy over red, go ahead. I personally, I'm not going to fanboy over any corporation at all. I have I have a 12th gen Intel CPU because I got it cheap, 350 quid all in. It's 12900KS, and yeah, you feel free to tell me what AMD platform I should have bought instead of that. But I got an absolute bargain, and you need to understand this was like a year ago, so I've had this set up a year. Well, this motherboard and CPU, so well, about a year ago. On the release of the 13th gen, basically, my friend upgraded to a 13900K, sold me his 12900KS for 200 quid. That's literally what happened. So I've got this. That's why I got Intel as a CPU. I have an NVIDIA card because I explained that before. When I was purchasing GPUs, NVIDIA was the one that was worth having. They were better for like editing and pure horsepower and stuff, efficiency, and yeah, Scalpocalypse. Beggars can't be choosers either, no? So yeah, I've got an NVIDIA card in there. I had an NVIDIA card before that was a 1080, and I don't know yet. I don't know whether it's going to be an AMD card in there yet, but it might be, especially with how games are coming out these days. And the Arc, I've had that a year, and there's going to be a video coming out on that. That was purely bought because for 120 quid, I added AV1 support to my system. I added a completely dedicated GPU for OBS, like straight up dedicated GPU for OBS. Everything OBS and all recording and stuff literally runs off that little Arc. I will have a video out on living with an Arc and how I've got it set up and stuff, and why you should. That is a wicked 100 quid. Like that for 100 quid, absolute bargain. For what you can get out of it, absolute bargain. That being said, that's a different video. But yes, my point is, you should be buying AMD GPUs, at least, especially if you're buying a GPU to get you through the next year or so. Because not only are they dirt cheap right now, because they haven't been selling, you know, AMD pretty much dropped the whole stack by about $200. So, like, they're all dirt cheap. Yes, because games at the moment, especially the next few that are coming through, are basically console to PC ports. They are designed on AMD architecture, and because they are designed on AMD architecture, that means that when they're swapping over onto PC, getting them ready for an AMD GPU is a walk in the park, whereas adding NVIDIA cards to it is more difficult. I think this was proven with Ghost of Tsushima. I feel like they did that. Being able to use DLSS and FSR at the same time wasn't necessarily something that they planned. I think the NVIDIA stuff was just clamped onto the side of the game, if you get me. They just gaffer taped it on because they ran out of time and effort. The game isn't too heavily demanding, so that, you know, it's pretty, but it's not like the most demanding graphics ever. So it's going to run fairly smoothly on most things, and it ran well enough on NVIDIA cards for them to need to push boundaries to get it to work properly. Plus, like I said, usually when it comes to porting things to PC, there's barely any money or time left in the project, and the corporates are trying to push it out the door. So having the game developed on your architecture makes incorporating it on your GPUs a lot easier and a lot better. That's why you get games like Ghost of Tsushima or Battlefield 5, shall we say, or Call of Duty Warzone. These are games that are literally developed for console and then added to PC, and like because of that, they really love themselves some AMD GPU, these games. So yeah, my argument for buying an AMD GPU, at least for a GPU for the next year or so, is that not only are they an absolute bargain at the moment because AMD have been forced to drop their prices, so almost every card in the stack is is a deal. They've also got a leg up on most of the games that are getting released in the next like year, basically. So most of the games that are getting released to you are going to be console to PC ports during the next year. So yeah, that's why. Like there's a potential that a lower end AMD card is going to run the game better than a higher end NVIDIA card, certainly at launch. So the advantage is there, basically. FSR, I will admit, FSR has got so much better than it used to be. Anyone that turns around and says that DLSS and FSR look the same, they don't. There's far more sort of pixelation, like blocking with FSR than you get with DLSS. Although in certain game applications, DLSS has some kind of nasty ghosting. So they both have their disadvantages and they both have their advantages. The fact of the matter is, if you use an RTX card, you're going to use DLSS, because on a RTX card, the DLSS is implemented using specific hardware that is put on the card for DLSS. It doesn't do anything else, which means it doesn't put any sort of impact on the rest of your system, which is why it has such good latency. Whereas FSR is software based, which is why it runs on anything. But the caveat to that is, it has higher latency. So yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks for still being here. So basically, in conclusion, you should be buying an AMD GPU, because at the moment they're having to sell them dirt cheap because no one's been buying them. So they're a hell of a good budget option right now, because you're basically buying from higher up in the stack at the same price range at the moment. Like, you're basically upgrading your GPU within the price because they've had to drop their prices. Secondly, like I said, most of the games that are going to be released in the next year or so are going to be console to PC ports, and they already have an AMD advantage. They're developed on AMD architecture. So when it comes to PC, the GPUs have already got a head start, which means that they're probably going to run faster, or at least, well, they'll run faster on that AMD GPU. Like, it'll probably, you see quite a lot of games with these console to PC ports that are basically like, they're taking AMD GPUs and they're like literally moving them a step up in the stack, which makes them just look like even more of a bargain if you just focus on just that game. But the thing is, like I said, the PC ports, the console to PC ports, are always going to favour AMD because they're fundamentally already on the architecture, and by the time they're actually porting it to PC, there's not going to be a lot of money or time left in the development of the game, and corporates just want it out, so they're going to do as little as possible. It is what it is. So AMD is going to have an advantage there, and so yeah, I would say for the next year or so, you should be using an AMD GPU. I'm, again, like I said, strongly considering it. So if you could, please drop a comment down below. Let me know what GPU you use. Are you considering upgrade? What GPU are you thinking about upgrading to? What GPU do you think I should get? Do you think I should get the 4070 Ti Super, or do you think I should get an RX 7900 XT? I don't care if you're a fanboy or not, just let me know. If there's anything that you'd like to let me know. Could you please, because it is important to me, could you please put a comment down below and let me know whether the Adrenaline software on AMD is compulsory, because the way I've been spoken to about it kind of comes across like it's compulsory, and I don't want it. I don't use it, I'm not going to use it, I won't use it. I know me, creature of habit, I'm not going to use their software. So I don't want software that's going to be running in the background that I'm never going to use. Like, I don't want it to be some freaking armory crate from AMD. Do you know what I mean? I don't need that. So, like, I just want to know whether with an AMD card I could just drop drivers on it, play some games, just send out a signal. That's all I need. I need it to send a signal out to 2 DP ports. That's it. All I need is a signal sent out to 2 DP ports, it play a game properly and run with just drivers. So if you could please just drop a comment down below in the comments and let me know whether that is possible with AMD GPU, because having compulsory software, I'm not a fan, and it would go as one of the negatives in my decision making. That being said, I will see you in the next one, guys, because we are going to be moving my system over there into another case so that I can start fabricating for the case and stuff. So yeah, watch out for that video, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for coming, and love you all. Bye bye.